Rebecca, what did you do? Tom's voice cracked through the phone at exactly 2:07 in the morning. I opened my eyes. The room was pitch black. The red glow of the digital clock stretched across the ceiling. My business partners won't stop calling. My mom's freaking out. Everyone keeps asking me the same thing. What the hell happened? I didn't answer. I just stared through the window at the empty street outside. 2 days earlier, this was the same man who couldn't even be bothered to show up for the most important day of my life. And now, fear had completely taken over his voice. Rebecca, please, say something, I answered quietly. I didn't do anything. Silence. Several long seconds passed before Tom spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't understand what's happening. I closed my eyes. No, I understood perfectly. I knew exactly what was happening. It was just that the truth had finally become too big for anyone to keep pretending they couldn't see it, and it had all started 2 days earlier. I stood in front of the mirror, carefully straightening the collar of my dress uniform. 28 years of service. Today, I was finally being promoted to colonel. This was supposed to be the proudest day of my career, but when I turned around, Tom was still sitting at the kitchen table. His eyes never left his phone. Are you ready? He looked up. For what? My promotion ceremony. He let out a small laugh. Rebecca, no one cares about some ceremony. I froze, not because I was surprised, but because, even after all these years, those words could still hurt. Tom grabbed his car keys. I've got a meeting. It'll only take an hour. You can go by yourself. The front door closed, and the whole house fell silent. My phone rang again. My mother-in-law. Daniel's busy. Melissa's busy. No one's coming. A good wife knows that family comes before a career. I didn't argue. I simply ended the call. Then I opened the last 2 text messages. I couldn't get the day off. My schedule's completely packed today. I looked at my uniform hanging in front of me. For a few seconds, I honestly wanted to take it off. Stay home. Pretend today didn't exist. But then, I took one slow, steady breath. If I couldn't honor nearly 30 years of my own sacrifice, no one else ever would. I put on my cover, opened the door, and walked outside. What I didn't know then was that just 2 days later, the very people who had chosen to turn their backs on me would do everything they could just to stand beside me again. When I walked into the ceremony hall at the Pentagon, the first thing I noticed was every family embracing the person they had come to celebrate. Flowers, cameras, laughter, congratulations echoing through the room, and the seat beside mine was still empty. Then my name was called. Colonel Rebecca Anderson. I walked onto the stage. The commanding officer pinned the eagle onto my shoulders. He smiled. You've earned every bit of this. Just one sentence, yet somehow, it hit harder than all the applause in the room. After the ceremony, families gathered for photos. That's when a senior Defense Department official walked over. He shook hands with each officer. When he reached me, he paused a little longer. Thank you for nearly 30 years of service. Camera flashes exploded around us. Someone captured the moment. I simply smiled, never imagining that one photograph would change everything. That evening, I came home to the same familiar house. No flowers, no cake, not even a simple congratulations. Tom walked through the living room. He asked only one question. So, it's over? Yeah. He nodded once, then headed upstairs without another word. The biggest day of my career ended like it was just another ordinary Thursday. The next afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Old friends, former teammates, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Every one of them had sent me the same link. I opened it. It was the photograph from yesterday. Standing beside me was one of the highest-ranking leaders in the Department of Defense. The post had already been shared thousands of times. Congratulations poured in by the minute. I smiled to myself, then slipped my phone back into my pocket. What I didn't know was that somewhere else, Tom's phone had started ringing non-stop too, and for the first time, the man who had said, "No one cares," was suddenly terrified. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen. Tom was already sitting at the table. In front of him was the photograph, the same one that was now everywhere. As I poured myself a cup of coffee, he finally looked up. You never told me. You knew people like that. I answered without emotion. You never asked. The kitchen fell silent. For the first time in years, Tom had no comeback. Just then, my phone buzzed. An old teammate, then another. Congratulations kept pouring in. A moment later, a text from Melissa appeared. Mom, I just saw the photo. I had no idea that day meant so much to you. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then replied with only one sentence. To me, it always did. Tom set his phone down. People keep asking why I wasn't there. I looked at him. So what did you tell them? I said, I had a meeting. I nodded. You did. You chose the meeting. Tom frowned. You're making me look bad. I slowly shook my head. No, your own choices did that. That afternoon, my mother-in-law called. Her voice had lost all its sharp edges. Rebecca, everyone at church is talking about that picture. You should have told the family how important this was. My eyes drifted to the family portrait sitting on the shelf. In that picture, I was still standing behind everyone else, quietly, almost invisible. I asked softly, what exactly was I supposed to tell everyone? That the day mattered. A sad smile crossed my face. I did. The problem was, no one was really listening. I ended the call. And for the first time, I understood something that had taken me decades to learn. For years, I'd made myself smaller, just to make everyone else feel comfortable. But not anymore, not again. 3 days later, the photograph was still everywhere. At church, at the grocery store. Even neighbors stopped me on the sidewalk. Congratulations, Colonel. We're proud of you. For the first time, I realized something. The world had never looked down on me. That afternoon, I had barely walked through the front door. When Tom hurried over, my accountant just called. A few clients are talking about canceling their contracts. He looked at me, waiting. For years, whenever his life fell apart, I was always the one who fixed it. This time, I simply asked, do you want my support as your wife? Or do you expect me to solve this for you? Tom froze. I offered a gentle smile. I'll always stand beside you, but I can't keep living your life for you. A week later, the Veterans Association invited me to their annual gala. Halfway through the evening, the MC suddenly called my name. Please welcome Colonel Rebecca Anderson. I stood, then, more than 200 people rose to their feet with me. The applause filled the ballroom. I looked across the room, and suddenly remembered the empty chair at my promotion ceremony. Only days earlier, I'd walked onto that stage completely alone. Tonight, hundreds of strangers were standing because of me. When the ceremony ended, I spotted Tom at the back of the ballroom. He stood quietly, watching one person after another come over to shake my hand. He didn't interrupt. He didn't push his way in. He didn't say a word. He simply watched. On the drive home, Tom spoke almost in a whisper. I honestly had no idea. People respected you this much. I kept my eyes on the road ahead. My voice was calm. That was never the problem. He turned toward me. What do you mean? I smiled faintly. Other people have always respected me. I let the silence linger for a few seconds. Then I finished. There was only one person who never did. The car fell silent. For the first time, Tom wasn't looking at his wife. He was looking at the woman he had misunderstood for 32 years. Saturday morning. I stepped onto the back porch. Tom was already sitting there. The coffee in front of him had gone cold a long time ago. He didn't look at me. He simply asked, will you sit with me for a minute? I nodded. The backyard was quiet. Neither of us spoke. A long time passed. Before Tom finally broke the silence, I've been a terrible husband. For the first time, he wasn't making excuses. He was just telling the truth. When did you stop being happy? I looked out across the yard. I don't know. Maybe. It didn't disappear all at once. It just slowly faded away. Tom lowered his head. I know when it happened to me. When we first got married. I was so proud of you. But every time you moved one step higher, I felt myself getting smaller. He clasped his hands together. Instead of working harder to stand beside you, I kept trying to pull you down. I convinced myself you were too ambitious, that you chose your career over us. I repeated it so many times that eventually I believed it myself. I sat there, speechless, 32 years, and at last, I understood what had really destroyed our marriage. It wasn't the military. It wasn't the deployments. It wasn't the years apart. It was Tom's insecurity. He looked at me. His eyes were red. I never wanted you to fail. I was terrified that one day you wouldn't need me anymore. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. I stood and answered it. Melissa and Daniel were standing on the porch. They looked at me. Then Melissa spoke softly. Mom, we came to apologize. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. Maybe the hardest conversation of all was only beginning. Melissa and Daniel sat across from me. No one spoke. Finally, Melissa broke the silence. Mom, I'm so sorry. I always believed you chose your career instead of your family. Daniel lowered his eyes. I believed that too. I never once asked what it had cost you. I looked at both of them. I missed birthdays. I missed graduations. It wasn't because I didn't want to be there. It was because I couldn't. Every time I left home, I just hoped that someday you'd understand. Melissa burst into tears. I understand now. But now, it feels too late. Without saying a word, she reached into her purse and placed my colonel's insignia on the table. She had picked it up after the promotion ceremony and quietly kept it with her ever since. I looked at the insignia. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. My daughter finally saw me. Just then, Tom's mother quietly wiped away a tear. Rebecca, I'm sorry too. I always thought I was protecting my son, but the truth is, I only helped him become a worse husband. The room fell silent. No one spoke, because everyone knew. No apology could ever return the years we had lost. Tom looked at me. I know. An apology isn't enough. I nodded. No, it isn't. So what do? I met his eyes. Don't prove it with words. Prove it with the way you live. Tom gave a small nod. No promises, no excuses, no grand speeches. He simply accepted it, and for the first time, I believed he had truly heard me. After that conversation, Tom never promised to change again. He simply did. One morning, I walked downstairs. Breakfast was already waiting for me. Another evening, I passed his office. Tom was sitting at his desk, reading a book about military families. When he noticed me, he looked up and said, "I'm trying to understand what your life was really like." I didn't answer, but for the first time, I felt like I didn't have to explain myself anymore. A few days later, I took Tom to a support gathering for military families. He barely spoke. He simply listened, really listened. On the drive home, he stared out the passenger window. I used to think, the uniform was just your job. Today, I finally understand. It was your whole life. I smiled to myself. It was the most sincere apology, even though he never actually said the words. That Friday afternoon, Melissa called. "Mom, don't make any plans for Saturday." "Why? It's a surprise. And this time, I'm not going to let you down." I didn't say anything. For years, I'd learned not to expect much, but this time, I decided to trust her. The next morning, Tom drove me to a community center. The hallways were strangely quiet. I glanced around. "Are we at the wrong place?" He smiled. "No. This time. Trust me." He stopped in front of a wooden door, looked at me for a long moment. "The day you became a colonel, I let you walk in there alone." He took a slow breath. "But today, I won't make that mistake again." Then, he slowly opened the door. The instant it swung open, the room erupted in applause, and I couldn't move. As the door opened, everyone inside rose to their feet. The applause filled the room. I stood there, frozen. In front of me were former teammates, old friends, neighbors, family, even people I hadn't seen in years. Melissa was the first to reach me. She wrapped her arms around me. "Mom, I should have been beside you the day you were promoted." Daniel lowered his head. "I always believed you chose work over us. But today, I finally understand. You were simply honoring the oath you made." Then my grandchildren ran over. They placed a small bouquet into my hands. The day I became a colonel, no one had given me a single flower. Today, I received more love than I'd ever dared hope for. I slowly looked around the room. The walls were covered with photographs, nearly 3 decades of military service, from a young second lieutenant to the day I pinned on the rank of colonel. Every photograph captured a chapter of my life that even I had forgotten. I turned toward Tom. "You did all this?" He gently shook his head. "It was all of us. I just showed up far too late." Tom stepped to the front of the room. His voice trembled. "I spent years measuring myself against my wife, when what I should have been doing was being proud of her." He looked at me. "The day you became a colonel, I let you walk in there alone. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But from today forward, you'll never have to stand alone again." No one spoke. Then, the room burst into applause once more. That evening, Tom and I sat together on the back porch. The sun slowly disappeared behind the trees. He spoke quietly. "In the end, it really was that photograph that changed everything." I smiled, then gently shook my head. "No, the photograph didn't change anything. It simply made everyone finally see the truth." I looked out across the yard. Some people spend an entire lifetime serving quietly, sacrificing without asking for recognition. What they need most isn't another promotion. It isn't applause. It's simply this: to be truly seen. by the people they love most.